Thomas Paine, Thomas Paine, Thomas Paine, Sam Adams, Sam Adams, Sam Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Franklin. These men spoke up for what they thought was right. From their courage came such documents as the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. From their willingness to speak what was sometimes unpopular but right, we enjoy such liberties as freedom of speech, the right to keep and bear arms, and freedom of religion. There are those who still wish to oppress our freedoms, and there are still patriots willing to stand up and defend life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Men like Zeb Bell, who honor our founding fathers and what they stood for. It's now time for Zeb at the Ranch, speaking up and defending your freedoms. Brought to you by Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers and all of the other great advertisers on the program. And now, Zeb Bell.
Here is a sign that was seen at a pro-gun rally. Picture this. My guns won't be illegal. They'll be undocumented. Good morning, everybody. Here comes Kate Smith and God Bless America, followed by a patriot to call in with our national anthem and our pledge, I should say, for this morning. Good morning. And a good morning, Zeb at the Ranch. I'm Zeb Bell with our major sponsor, your Magic Valley, Les Schwab Tire Centers. All 7 locations serving you with the Founders Day celebration going on in honor of a wonderful man, Les Schwab. And you stop in and see all 7 locations, any of them, today. Don't forget, too, some of our great advertisers like Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation, and they're located at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. Well, I probably scared some people when I said our national anthem. I meant to say our Pledge of Allegiance, and let's go to the phone line. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Lorna. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm peachy. Go ahead with our pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and we'll see you on Thursday at Lunch Bunch. Thanks, Lorna.
All
righty.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. You know, I guess I got a little bit concerned about the national anthem after I listened to the horrendous singing of the national anthem by Fergie. Oh, that pop star. Oh, that was one of the worst things. I put that in the same category as Roseanne. Woo, it was bad. Let's go to the weather forecast real quick. K&R Rental at 256 South, 600 west of Heyburn, right there on the Burley-Paul Highway. And they open the doors early in the morning at 7 a.m., Roger and the crew. Now, about 3 weeks ago, they called and said, hey, we've got heaters for all occasions to keep everything warm and not freezing up and everything. Well, now, look at the temperature outside. I still think here I've got 7 degrees right now. So check on all the heaters available for rent to help stave off the cold at K&R Rental on the Burley-Paul Highway, 678-3122, along with all your tools and all your equipment. Right now, here's the weather forecast.
Well, it's kind of like we hit winter 2.0. Here's your weather forecast for Zeb at the Ranch. We do have a slight chance of snow this morning. Mostly sunny skies as we hit into the afternoon hours. We are expecting a high of 23. Winds out of the west, right around 10 miles an hour with gusts as high as 25 miles an hour. Tonight, partly cloudy skies, low of 9. Wind chill factor values could make it as low as 0. Winds out of the west, right around 10 miles an hour. For tomorrow, partly sunny skies with a high near 31 for Wednesday night. Mostly cloudy with a low of 13. And for Thursday, again, we do have a very slight chance of snow showers, partly sunny skies, and a high of 33. That's your weather for Zeb at the Ranch.
Thank you very much. And right now, we want to remind everybody about all the tools, all the equipment, and right now with these cold temperatures, all the heaters right there available for rent at K&R Rental, 256 South, 600 west of Heyburn. Number to call, Roger and the crew, 678-3122. Also want to remind you, Burley Livestock Sale Yard, big sale coming up on this Thursday. My, yes. 1100 Occidental Avenue in Burley. The number to call for cattle consignments and sale information, 678-9411. That number again, 678-9411. Merv May, Cade Rogge, Lance Udy at the sale that works for you. About 10 a.m. starting time, Burley Livestock Sale Yard this Thursday. Don't you miss that sale. A big happy birthday today goes out to Kent Benson. Yeah, old roping buddy, and he's an old codger today, celebrating his birthday, and I hope he's listening. Kent Benson, happy birthday to you. He and his lovely wife, Kathy, really, really good people. Just a little bit south of Burley. Happy birthday. Want to remind you, too, about Darrell's Cleaners, and they're located at 1223 Albion Avenue in Burley. They can clean anything. I mean, whether it's your curtains or whether it's your sports jackets, whether it's your dress shirts that you need really pressed up looking good, they can handle everything. Turn all your rumply crumplies right back to you looking brand spanking new. And by the way, too, if you don't have time to do your laundry, they will wash, dry, fold, and iron all your clothes, just like Mom used to. Darrell's Cleaners, 1223 Albion Avenue in Burley. You stop in and see those great folks today. Really, really nice people. Okay, your turn, and we'd like to have some calls here this morning, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. I want to remind you, and it's coming up on this Saturday, I know a lot of you are going to be there. I know Deanne and I will be there at the Lincoln Day Banquet. It's going to be this Saturday, February 24th, at the Burley Inn. That's the change this year. It's going to be at the Burley Inn. The meet and greet starts at high noon, and then lunch at 1 o'clock. They'll have an auction, and tickets are going to be sold at the door. They are $25 each. Everybody be there at the Lincoln Day Banquet. All the politicals will be there. You can ask questions and expect to get answers at the Lincoln Day Banquet this Saturday at the Burley Inn at high noon. All right, give us a call, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. What did you think? Honestly, I'd like to have your opinion on this. And I noticed that the National Chamber of Commerce is supporting this, and I don't understand why. There is a proposal to enhance and enlarge the national gasoline tax at least 25 cents a gallon. And the National Chamber of Commerce is advocating this, and I find that that's just going to do nothing but absolutely hurt the rural people, farmers, people living in rural areas, livestock producers, everybody. That's going to be a real slap in the face. And there was an economist on television the other day, and he said at maximum, even with the rate of inflation the way it is now today, 12 cents would be maximum for the gasoline increase tax. And what really gripes me is the push for all the electric cars. They don't pay that gasoline tax, and they're being afforded the same driving ease and comfort on the roadways and highways and freeways. That's got to be a fair and equitable tax, and 25 cents a gallon gasoline tax. And then you can imagine there's going to be more heaped on by the states. Not fair and equitable right now. What are your thoughts on that? Give me a call, please. 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. We got some sharp people out there, and I'd like to have your opinion. And I'm going to mention that to Kyla at the Minnecasia Chamber of Commerce on Thursday. Denny's Restaurant, we are going to be over there for Zeb's Lunch Bunch on Thursday. And I absolutely urge you to stop over and be a part of our lunch bunch. We usually have anywhere from 50 to 60 to 70, sometimes 80 people or more come in. Caller, I'll be right there at Denny's Restaurant, 611 North Overland in Burley, America's Diner. Yep. we're going to say thank you to all of our gift certificate donors: Walmart, Smith's Foods, Hanson Mortuary, Stokes Groceries, Doug Martin, good old boy, and, of course, Denny's themselves. I appreciate everything they do. You're going to love the food at America's Diner, Denny's Restaurant. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning. You saying I'm old?
Very.
Experienced. I'm experienced.
You know, I'm going to toot your horn for you because you probably wouldn't. And Doug Martin, I say congratulations to you for being selected for a very nice civic award of helping others and contributing to others. And congratulations.
Well, thank you, sir. It was quite an honor. I was amongst some pretty good people there.
Well, you fit right in.
Well, thank you.
You're very welcome. And it was nice that you're...
But I appreciate it.
Well, your family, it was really nice that you could celebrate that award and accolades of your achievements with your family all surrounding you. That's nice.
Yes, it was. It was real nice.
Okay, old buddy, what can I do for you this morning?
About this gas tax.
Yeah.
I used to be an owner-operator. I had my own truck.
Yeah.
And Idaho has a 25% gas tax. Well, this was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so did federal. So every gallon of gas I bought in Idaho, or diesel, I paid 50 cents a gallon tax on it.
Right.
And I would burn sometimes 200 gallon a day.
Right.
So a diesel truck is paying lots and lots of taxes.
Yep.
And like you said, these electric cars are paying nothing.
You know, this is the gripe I've got, and it makes no sense to me whatsoever. Correct me if I'm wrong. But with Elon Musk and the rest of these people saying, oh, electric cars are the way to go, and we'll start all these different charging stations and everything. Sure, you can only go about 80, 90 miles, and then you're going to have to look for a charging station. Then you're going to have downtime of maybe 4 hours, 5 hours, and then you can go another 80 miles. Would you please tell me the common sense in a progressive society of electric cars, and they're not going to pay their fair share? It's a waste of money.
Well, it is. And the only logical deal for an electric car would be just commute around town.
Yeah.
And you'd have to have a regular one to go out on the road and, go for a trip. But also these charging stations that our taxpayers build, who gets charged for electricity this car uses while it's recharging?
Yeah, and there's another thing, too. Our electrical grid, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out, it's a fact. Our electrical grid, per se, is being taxed right now to the outer limits. How much more can it stand with the reduction of coal and the reduction of other power sources, and these nincompoops saying that they can restore that power grid with wind and solar? Doug, that's not in the cards.
It isn't. And I sent you an article on this, quite a while ago, about what an electric car taxes on the electrical grid.
Yeah.
And everybody gets home around 5, 6 o'clock. That's when everybody will plug them in.
Yep.
That's when the demand is the highest anyway.
Yep.
So that's just going to, it's not going to work.
Well,
But the federal government, that one guy seen on TV said, federal gas tax is 15 cents. And that is totally false. And also the gas tax goes towards beautification. It goes for doing the off-ramps and putting these sound walls in the cities because the cities are tired of listening to the freeway.
yeah, but wait a minute. I'll say this. If there's going to be a tax increase for the refurbishing of our roads and our highways and our freeways and our bridges, and that money, Doug, will be locked up and only distributed for payments for the infrastructure, I would go along with it. But and you tell me if you think I'm wrong, the pilfering of those funds from all other government agencies, it's rob Peter to pay Paul.
Exactly. It is. And they get that money and they get a windfall and they're politician rich. We got all this money, let's spend it.
Yeah.
you know, instead of putting it where it belongs.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's mismanaged to begin with.
It's politics as usual. It's politics as usual on the Potomac. That's what it is.
Right. On a semi, we, you know, traveled several states. So we had to pay gas tax in several states. They have an IFTA, which if I drive so many miles in Idaho, then my miles per gallon, I had to pay that much gas tax in Idaho. Wyoming was only 7 cents a gallon. So then I would get...
Quickly, Doug, I got another call, quickly.
Yeah. But anyway, to make it fair with these cars, and it's not very popular, and I wouldn't like it either, the only way to make it fair is miles driven. You get charged so much a mile for every mile you drive.
Yeah, but wait a minute. There's a fallacy in that, too, because what if you do a lot of driving out of state and you're charged by the state of Idaho for the gross miles? That's not fair.
Then only way there is for a man to keep a record on how many miles he drove out of state and how many gallons of gas he purchased.
Oh, my goodness. This could be a bookkeeping nightmare.
It was a booking nightmare for a trucking company.
I've got to run. Say about the seniors, as you always will, because I got another caller waiting on the other line.
All righty. Anyway, let's take care of our seniors, guys. You know, they help make the country it is today, so let's support them the way they supported us.
Hey, call back a little later on this trucking deal if we're still on that conversation, because I've got another question for you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Caller, I'll be right there. Stand by. I want to remind everybody about my friends at Ramsey Heating and Electric at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. Oh, they get there early in the morning at 7:30 to 5, Monday through Friday. All your heating, cooling, and electrical needs. I don't think you're going to have to worry about the cooling needs today. My goodness, it's chilly out there. And I urge you to give them a call or stop in, 678-0459. And they've been in business serving you for close to 60 years. What a great business. What a great family. Ramsey Heating and Electric in Burley. And they provide warm winters and cool summers. Thank you. Real quick, caller, before I get to you, living at home can be a little bit risky when you're all alone as a senior. I mean, the loneliness and the safety hazards and the possible injuries and the not fixing the proper nutritious meals and maybe not even taking your medication. Oh, no, don't do that. I tell you a place where you can go and still have the ability to maintain your independence, and that's Pomerel Place, a place for senior living at 1301 Bennett Street in Burley. The number to call, find out more, wonderful people, 677-8212. 677-8212, Pomerel Place in Burley. Caller, you've been very patient. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning, Zeb.
Hi, Tony.
How much money, how many billions of dollars is it costing us to support this illegal DACA program? Why can't these people be put in the back of the line, take that money, instead of raising the gasoline tax, take that money and use it for all the infrastructure that we need? Now, how many of these people in DACA are just totally illegal and don't belong here?
Well, I think you could say almost all of them are totally illegal and don't belong here as citizens. And what fries the bacon in the pan is the fact that they're going to jump ahead of the line over people that have gone through the legal channels and spent lots of money trying to become and obtain a U.S. citizenship. And they're going to be gifted a pathway to citizenship because their parents came here illegally in the first place. No, I'm very upset about DACA program. And to be very honest with you and sounding harsh, I don't care if it is defunded.
Well, you know, my family, most of them came from Italy, Ellis Island, to New York, and from there they were on their own.
Yeah.
There was no help.
Yeah.
So why do we have to support these people?
Well, I'm just absolutely thinking that we need to clean up the entire act. When you talk about whether it's illegal immigration or whether it's the Dreamers or whether it's a great big huge gas tax which is going to hurt the citizenry out in the rural areas, or whether we're talking about the crimes that are being committed in this country, whether you're talking about gun control or the Second Amendment or what they're going to do with crimes in the inner city, we've got a lot more pressing problems to take care of than we do having to worry about the idiotic, possible, it's never been proved yet in over a year, Russian collusion. It's time for our people that we hired to go to work for us, go to work for us.
Well, people got money coming back from their taxes, and they're going to give it back in a gasoline tax.
Yeah, which I find insane. I agree with you. By the way, how's Mary doing this morning?
Oh, she's doing fine. You know her. You can't put that gal down.
Well, I'll tell you what. You just stay on the good side of her, because I think she'll just kind of slap your ears. Okay. Bye, Tony. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you. They are the nicest, sweetest people, and we're fortunate to be friends with them. Hey, callers, give me a call. What do you think about the gas tax? What do you think about... I want to ask you about all the filth, and that's what I consider it to be, that's out there for the kids today. I said the other day on the program that I thought movies and the video games and all of that stuff, I said that should be just absolutely burned. And I got a little feedback from that. Some of the people said, well, that's terrible, you know, these kids, they can handle it. Well, evidently not. And now I hear that more and more people are coming forward and saying, wait a minute. When you start talking about these video games where they just absolutely have no appreciation for life and they are desensitized, and these video games are so absolutely expressive as to what's going on, far more than what many of these kids should ever see, know, or feel in their early years. And then the movies and the lyrics to a lot of these songs and everything, it's time to clean up the act. It's time to clean up the act. Right now, let's talk about our friends at Dino Septic Service. They recently purchased Dennis Dockstetter's business, and they've expanded big time to serve you. Absolutely the finest of people at Dino Septic Service with all your septic tank pumping, backhoe service, water and sewer lines installed, septic inspections, liquid waste removal. The list goes on. And I urge you to give them a call in Rupert at 436-6526 or in Burley at 678-1638. And they are the best. They work hard to be very fast, fair, and friendly to you, Dino Septic Service, with that great big truck saying, smells cargo on the way. Dino Septic Service, really good people. By the way, also, while I'm waiting for your phone call, I want to remind you about some people that really, really helped me, and that's Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation. I know after the knee and after the hip and everything else, I was really in a world of pain, hurt, and the legs weren't functioning like they used to. They were never any good, but they were a lot less. Then I started going to Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation, and Nick Greenwell and all the physical therapists, they really helped me. And I spent a lot of time in that hydrotherapy pool to get me back going again. Ooh, it works. It works. You get a hold of them today. The number to call, 678-1191. Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation, 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley. Make an appointment today. All right, calls are welcome and appreciated. 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. What do you think about just absolutely cracking down families? And I'm sure that we live in an area where I think that the percentages are really, really up there for conservative family values. And when mom and dad say, no, you're not going to have this in my house. No, you're not going to have that in the house. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning again, sir.
Well, yes, there you are.
Okay. What's your question?
I forgot now that I changed subjects. I'm old, you know.
I know it. But, you know, you talked a little bit about the violence in the society nowadays.
Yeah.
when we were growing up, you know, and even my sibling, my children were growing up, there was TV shows of Lone Ranger. There was, you know, where the bad guy and the good guy, Gunsmoke and Bonanza and all those, where there was bad guys and good guys, and the good guy won.
Yep.
And yes, there was shooting. Yes, there was, you know, but it never really, become
graphic. It wasn't graphic.
Yeah, it wasn't as graphic. That's a good word.
Yeah.
But now they've got these video games, and I was talking to my stepson. He's in the military, and he plays some video games and that. And he told me, he says, in a video game, it's almost like real life.
Yeah.
He says that when you shoot somebody in a video game, it's like exactly doing it in real life.
Well, let me ask you something. Let's just stop for a minute. Did you, when you were going to high school, have a student that was maybe in your class or that you knew of in school that maybe was a little shy and retiring and exhibited some tendencies to be a little bit off the norm, like saying and doing things that kind of made you question whether or not this person was going up and down on the teeter-totter correctly? And did you ever have a fear of that person?
No, I really didn't. We had a few in our class that were, well, we called them hellions back then, or renegades, you know. They just didn't like authority and always bucked it. They'd never done the best in school, and I don't know where it come from, but I never, ever thought or feared of them grabbing a gun and coming into school.
Well, now I will say this, and I'm going to be staying away from names because naturally I don't want to mention anybody's name. I'm not even going to mention the school. But there was a person in my junior class that had moved in from out of the area. And he was not of what you might say normal. I mean, he exhibited tendencies to want to hurt things, hurt animals, and even back in those days, I mean, it was pretty obvious that perhaps he had some problems. And some of the things he said, and it was through one teacher. I remember this teacher vividly, and I was in the class when this happened. He went over and put his arm around this guy, and he says, I think you and I are going to take a little walk right now. And they went down to the principal's office, and through the course of that conversation with the principal, the teacher, etc., they really thwarted a suicidal tendency that this kid was going to try to put in place that evening.
Yeah. You know, and that's what it takes people to recognize something's wrong and do something about it. You know, they tried to do something about this kid in Florida.
Yeah.
I mean, a cop show up 30-plus times to his house.
How many warning flags do you need before these people are going to jump in and say, wait a minute, we've got a real problem here. It needs to be addressed. It can't be put on the back burner anymore. I've read all the reports about this kid, and I'm not giving any excuse to the kid by any means. But, you know, there were a lot of warning signs that somebody should have jumped in.
Exactly. That's exactly right. You know, and the kid didn't have the best of life.
No.
You know, and
no.
There's a lot of kids that didn't have the best of life, but they made right decisions and turned out good.
Well, I just say this, Doug, that it's a horrendous happening, and I hope there are some answers that are going to be obtained over the next couple of weeks to where we can make sure that I hope never happens again. I will say this, and I took some heat over this too. I said the other day on the air that I thought that we should start having armed qualified, that's the words I used, armed qualified guards at the entrances to high schools. You can't get into an airport or any other activity or location like that without going through armed security. Why should our schools be any less? And I also mentioned that the holograms, maybe have the holograms around their neck or as a shirt pin or whatever to really show and tell who they are and their purpose there at the school as a student or whatever. I think there are ways that we can really tighten this up, and the naysayers are saying, well, we can't turn our schools into armed prisons. Wait a minute. Everything else has security. Why can't our schools?
Well, it's about the only public facility we have that doesn't have armed guards.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got a courthouse, you got the state building, the Capitol, Congress, the White House. I mean, you just got to look around.
Well, and the thing is, why should our kids accept anything less? And why shouldn't there be somebody that really knows, has the ability and the training to stop and thwart a problem? I'm not talking about a one-bullet Barney with a bullet in his shirt pocket. I'm talking about somebody that is going to be there and the first line of defense for those kids.
Exactly, like that sheriff in Ohio somewhere.
Yeah.
Offering the concealed carry classes to the teachers, and people have told him, well, teachers don't want to carry guns. He has had over 250 want to do this. So he's going to do 5 classes, of 50 a class. He's got vendors coming in, going to feed them while they're taking these classes.
Yeah. I got to run.
People are stepping up and going to pay for their license for their concealed carry.
Absolutely. I've got to do a commercial break, Doug. Thank you so much. I appreciate your call back. Thank you. All right. Hey, callers, call me. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, there's got to be a way. There has got to be a way without infringing on legalities of owning guns. I'm not going to give up my guns. I'm not going to give up my personal security, nor should you. We're legal citizens, and we are absolutely, I think, under the Second Amendment in our Constitution, the first line of defense for our families and our property. But there has to be something done. Calls are welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Berry Equipment and Rental. I think these are really good folks. Berry Equipment and Rental with locations at 159 West Highway 30 in Burley, along with 465 Addison Avenue West in Twin Falls, and up in Nampa. They have all the equipment to get the job done. I'm telling you, they've got all the Bobcats. They've got them in all shapes and sizes. They've got the new and used excavators. They've got all the Doosan equipment rentals, and equipment sales. Absolutely. All you need to do is stop in or give them a call at Berry Equipment and Rental. And don't be embarrassed if you're not sure how to run the equipment. Oh, no. They've got a great big sandbox out behind. They'll teach you. Berry Equipment and Rental, Highway 30 in Burley, Addison Avenue West, Twin Falls, and up in Nampa. Berry Equipment and Rental. Oh, and by the way, before I start taking another call, there is going to be, this sale is absolutely known as one of the best bull sales anywhere in America today. I'm telling you what, it's the Cordell and Patty Sheridan Ranch Bull Sale. 23rd annual bull sale is going to be at March 3rd, starting at 1 p.m. at the Burley Livestock Yard. Lunch is going to be provided at noon. Good eating, too. And they're going to sell 80 bulls, 30 coming 2-year-olds and 50 yearlings, and free delivery up to 300 miles. These are top-notch bulls, top-notch people. Cordell and Patty Sheridan. Number to call for more information, 208-824-5531, or go to their website, www.sheridancattle.com. Big bull sale, March 3rd, Burley Auction Yard, Sheridan Ranch Bull Sale. That is a good one, and they really do raise excellent cattle, so try to be there. Let's see. What else have we got going on the news this morning? Oh, and over 25,000 calls came in to ABC Network the other day after Joy Behar said she thought that Vice President Mike Pence was mentally off balance because he talked to Jesus and waited for Jesus to talk to him. Christians absolutely went after her and really chastised her, and they went to ABC and said, we want her off the air. And Joy Behar, in a very weak, limp-wristed fashion, said, oh, I was just joking. I've seen the tape 20 times. She was not joking. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Mr. Bell.
Hi there, Donna.
We have, as far as these school shootings, my heart goes out to the parents and to the teachers and to the families and friends of these young children and the heroes that tried to save them. But you know what? We have combat veterans. We have retired police officers, firemen that would be more than happy to go in and protect these schools. Why can we not let them help and stop these shootings?
So I think what I'm hearing you say is that you would agree with me that we're going to have somebody, some persons of high training, quality people that are going to be watching the entrance and exits of our schools. I don't care about the comments about don't make schools into an armed prison camp. Wait a minute. Everything else has security today. Why not our kids in school? And I'm glad to hear that you agree with me.
Oh, I've always agreed. Our schools are supposed to be a safe place for our children. And right now, with all the discord going on in this country, we really need to step up and make sure that they are safe. What a horrible experience for the students that survived. Yeah. I mean, they're gonna remember this and have nightmares for the rest of their lives.
I agree.
There are people willing to go in and protect our children. Why can we not get that done?
And when you think about it, Donna, I haven't sat down and really penciled everything out as to the mechanics of how it could be done, what would have to be done structurally to basically have a funnel safeguard system for people coming in. But I still maintain, just like you, that there are enough great people out there with the adequate and very professional training that could handle the job as the first line of defense for those kids.
I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, it just breaks my heart. I've got grandkids that are in school.
Yeah.
I don't want them being shot up.
Absolutely.
And as far as the Joy Behar and the Whoopi Goldbergs, turn the channel. I've watched their show for about 5 minutes. Never watched it again. They're so biased. They're so out of touch with reality. Let's get them off the air.
I agree. Good to hear from you this morning. And may I ask, is George still sleeping?
No, actually, he's just coming in the door from feeding.
Oh, my goodness.
He's actually up and walking and breathing this morning.
Well, see, miracles do not cease. Thank you.
They do happen.
Okay, goodbye. Thanks.
You have a good day.
All right, take care. Caller number 2, you're on the air. Please go ahead, please.
Yes. My heart goes out to these families and stuff, but I blame society for this mess. In a lot of these shootings, the kids are ostracized, shunned, whatever, from a young age. The teachers, the administration, society itself, case in point. And then they don't try to figure out, you've got a sweet little child in your class, and then all of a sudden they turn into a monster. And instead of taking the time as a concerned teacher to say, hey, what happened? What's going on in your life? They just assume that they've turned into a brat. Case in point, there was a little boy who just suddenly did that, and the teacher had enough compassion to take him aside and say, what's going on? And he says, my mama just was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, my.
Well, jeepers, she could have treated him like a horrible little boy that he had turned into, or put her arms around him and held him for a minute.
Yeah.
And society won't let you touch children, and some children, that's the only kind touch they get.
You know, you bring
At school.
You bring such a good point forward, and I am so sorry for your pain about talking about this, but you bring up an excellent point about how we have to keep all of our kids today at an arm's length, and that's so sad because what you just did by telling me that story, it just brought tears to my eyes because we can't comfort these kids and let them know that they are cared for, that they are loved, and that somebody else cares, and it's a shame.
Yeah, I knew some little boys, and this wasn't at school. This is what they got at home. One little boy had black and blue belt marks. He was 4 years old, the size of a belt, all over his little back. And I watched his father backhand him off a chair because he was helping me wash the dishes.
Oh my!
And you see what happens when that 4-year-old gets to school?
Yeah.
He smelled, and he didn't have the nicest clothes, but his home conditions were horrible, and this was back 40 years ago. Those kids would have been better off if the Humane Society picked them up and put them in cages, but at the time, we didn't know who to call.
Yeah.
And and literally. And so, yeah, society is to blame. Teachers are not allowed to, and most teachers don't even know how to be compassionate anymore. I could tell you some stories that
Well, I think you've kind of summed it up in a great fashion that we as a society, because of instances, not common, but instances, we've lost our compassion and we've lost our love. Thank you for your call, and please know that I appreciate your call anytime you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
God bless you. We're going to do some more calls in just a minute, but I want to remind you we got to get a weather forecast on here quickly, and the weather brought to you by Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids, and they are located right behind the Minidoka Hospital across from the emergency room. There are two doctors serving you at Mount Harrison Audiology, and they are Dr. Christine Pickup and Dr. Courtney Mitchell, and they really care about your hearing health, and they will work with you and provide the best care possible. Call them for an appointment today at 312-0957. Right now, here's the weather.
Well, it's kind of like we hit winter 2.0. Here's your weather forecast for Zebeth Ranch. We do have a slight chance of snow this morning. Mostly sunny skies as we hit into the afternoon hours. We are expecting a high of 23. Winds out of the west right around 10 miles an hour with gusts as high as 25 miles an hour. Tonight, partly cloudy skies, low of 9. Wind chill factor values could make it as low as 0. Winds out of the west right around 10 miles an hour. For tomorrow, partly sunny skies with a high near 31 for Wednesday night. Mostly cloudy with a low of 13. And for Thursday, again, we do have a very slight chance of snow showers, partly sunny skies, and a high of 33. That's your weather for Zebeth Ranch.
And thank you very much. And right now we want to remind everybody about Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. If you're noticing a diminishment in your hearing, please don't just say, well, I'm just getting old. No. You get a hold of them today at 312-0957. They can help and they will help you at Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. Calls are welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. I don't know what the answer is, and maybe others in the audience have a concrete plan of action as to what needs to be taken to make sure that those horrendous tragedies like Columbine and down in Florida and no more. Schools, very unfortunately, are considered to be soft targets. In other words, very easy for the bad people to get in and wreak mayhem. Why should they be soft targets? Why shouldn't there be more than adequate protection? Why shouldn't there be more than adequate security? Why? You know, you can talk all day about saying, well, we got to take all the guns away. Well, that is a punishment for those that have never done anything other than want to protect their family. And bad people always have a means and a way of getting and obtaining weapons of any sort to do mayhem at their wish. There's got to be more with security. People say, well, we can't afford it. Well, we can't afford not to. I made the statement the other day, and a guy called me on it, and he said, I'll bet you wouldn't probably contribute. Yes, I would. If I say something on this program, I mean it. I think that absolutely, I don't care how big the school district, I don't care how small the school district, there has to be protection for our kids, and these people have to know what they're doing, because they will be the first line of defense for your daughter, your son, or your grandchild. Calls are welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. By the way, on another story, the crank, very, very misleading phone calls are coming back. Be careful. And I had an instance last night, not once, but twice, of a caller that got on the air. It was of Oriental sounding voice, and started asking me a bunch of questions. And that was at 8 o'clock last night. They wait till you're settled in for the evening. Hang up on these people. It was amazing to me. They said, well, are you so-and-so? And I said, yes. And are you with such and such a company? And do you do that? And I thought, uh-oh, time to hang up the phone. And be very, very wary of some of the calls and how they are structured to manipulate getting information from you. I reiterate, hang up the phone. And then if you have any information about them whatsoever as to who they are or what company they said they represented, call the Better Business Bureau and share that information. But don't give any information out over the phone. Anything about your business, anything about where you bank, anything about your family, nothing. Hang up the phone. Calls welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. If anybody else has noticed an increase in some of these kind of calls, give me a jingle real quick. I'd like to put you on the air. I want to remind you, too, about our 7 great locations of your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, and they are great locations. And they're celebrating the Founders Celebration in honor of Mr. Les Schwab himself, a gentleman that started this company, the Les Schwab Tire Centers, when he was in his mid-50s, and wow, now it's grown to over 475 locations all through the West of the best in service to you. All the great tires, front-end alignment, shocks and struts, brake service, batteries. I'm telling you, the list goes on, and they are good for all the tires you need for your car, pickup, SUV, whatever. Stop in today and see them. Lane and Rupert, Dave on Blue Lakes and Twin, Mike and Buell, Mike and Jerome, the Twist family in Paul, Daniel on Pole Line in Twin Falls, and my buddy Randy on Overland in Burley. Nobody better. Your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Morning, Zeb. Just dare to turn on the radio and listen to what you're talking about. My recent one is what's been going on to me, and it's quite frequently, 2 or 3 times a month, is I'll get somebody with an Indian accent, like out of the country Indian. And his name's Rick or Rob or Russell. Anyway, he wants to say, hello, how are you? Is this Mr. Helms? And I said, what do you want? How's Idaho? How's the weather in Idaho? I said, what do you need? And they hang up on me. And I was told to never say yes or give any words of acknowledgement, because they can record that and use that against you later on. And whenever I don't give them words of acknowledgement, ask them what they need, what they want, what can I do for you, they hang up.
Yeah.
I'll let you go.
No, I appreciate it. And, Riley, you're 100% right. Hang up the phone. I've got to ask Wheels. Wheels, I noticed a little static. Is that going through the line, or is it just coming my way? Oop, there we go.
There we go. Okay. I do hear a little bit of static. It's coming from your line, but it fades out, and then it gets real clear. So
okay. Well, let's do this at 9 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, I'll give you a call, and we'll reestablish a new line.
All right, sir.
All right, thank you. Calls welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. want to end on kind of a nicer note this morning because I know this man and he's 94 years young. And when the Times News does something nice, I'll say they do something nice. They ran a nice feature on the front page of the paper this morning about a gentleman that I've known for a long, long time, Vic Graybill. And he's a retired photographer. He's a volunteer at St. Luke's in Twin Falls. And he has photographed some of the greatest, most influential people in the world, Marilyn Monroe, Louis Armstrong, Jack Dempsey, and he used to work at KMBT, did as a matter of fact when I first came into this country, and then went to work at CSI. A very, very nice man. Caller, I've got a minute left. Good morning, you're on the air.
Hi, Zeb. Mike, your friendly gas man coming over to you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I get them quite often, about 2 a week. They call and they want to know, would I like to lower my rate, my interest rate on my credit card? And I'd say, who do you represent? Well, we represent multiple companies. If you'll just give us the number of your credit card, we can get your rates down to nothing. Almost.
Yep. They actually are going forward and asking that question of the number of the credit card. And did they slide it in such a fashion that if you were unaware, you might get caught and give it to them?
Yeah, so I appreciate your show, and thanks for getting this information out, Zeb.
Yeah, God bless you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. The thing that Mike just said, and I agree with him, they're so subtle sometimes in the way they ask their questions. Well, we noticed this, that, and the other. Just give us your credit card number, and we'll take care of it. Oh, boy, don't give them any numbers. No bank account numbers. Nothing. Hang up the phone. Thank you. We're not going to hang up the phone. Well, we are, and we're going to reestablish a different line, but we're going to come back at 9:06 with Dr. Bill over at Ark Animal Hospital, and then the Idaho Legislative Update at 9:30. Don't go away. And good morning, and welcome to hour number 2. Zeb at the Ranch. I'm Zeb Bell with our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations serving you, and along with some of our great advertisers like Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. Right now, let's have this good word for our friends at Western Waste Services.
From the canyons of the Snake River and all across southern Idaho, we're always at your disposal. Western Waste Services, we care about our community, our resources, and this great land. Western Waste Services is lending a hand, always at your disposal.
Western Waste Services, don't forget they got all the dumpsters in different sizes. You call them and say, gee whiz, I got an office like Zeb Bell's and I need a big dumpster. Yeah, you probably will. 2 of them. And fill them up. They'll come and get it. I'll tell you what, they are so handy and they are always at your disposal. Give them a call today, Western Waste Services. Wonderful people serving you at 734-6969, Western Waste Services. Yes, Wheels.
I was just going to ask, sir, would you be able to take a call real quick from Doug before you...
No, I really don't have time to do that right now. I've got a segment that I've got to get started, but I will talk to him a little bit later on this morning. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
No problem.
I want to remind everybody, too, about our friends at Cassia Regional Hospital, providing you and your family excellent health care and answers and services. They're right here, close to home. That's right, Cassia Regional Hospital, offering the latest technological advances in medicine, like their new oncology programs and the telehealth programs, which use electronic information and telecommunications to promote long-distance patient clinical health care. Absolutely the best and innovative. Your friends, your neighbors, Cassia Regional Hospital, quality care close to home. And by the way, too, I also want to remind you quickly before we go to Dr. Bill on the line that Hanson Mortuary at 710 6th Street in Rupert with Joel Heward, the manager, his family serving you, his staff serving you, and service is the key word. They really take care and help the families always with the highest ethical standards with unquestioned integrity. I urge you to write the number down and remember, we all need to take care of the pre-planning for funerals and eliminate a lot of the pressure on our families. The number to call, 436-5636. Hanson Mortuary at 710 6th Street in Rupert, and Joel Heward also serving you and your family at Morrison Payne Funeral Home on East Main in Burley. Right now we're going to go to the phone line, and I'm very privileged to have this man take time out of his busy schedule to come on our program this morning, and that's Dr. Bill over at Ark Animal Hospital at 750 21st Street in Heyburn. Good morning, Dr. Bill. How are you? What does that mean? Dr. Bill's turned into a beeper. Evidently we lost him. Wheels is, can you get him back on the phone, please?
Yeah, give me a couple minutes and I can do that.
I will take care of that. I don't know what happened to him, but all of a sudden he disappeared, so hopefully we can get him back. While we are waiting for him to come back on the program this morning, I want to remind you about some really, really good people that have all the furniture, they've got all the carpeting, they have got everything for you and the beautification of your home, and that's Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More. Wow. You know, I want to talk about recliners, because I bought a recliner there, my goodness, it's been 5-6 years ago. Great recliner, my comfy chair, and they've got a huge selection of recliners. All you need to do is go in and try one on, and I mean that when you try one on, because whether you're tall, whether you're short, whether you're skinny, or you're like me, you got to try one on to see which one's going to be the most comfortable for you, and they have a phenomenal selection waiting for you at Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More, 459 Overland in Burley. Whether it's any kind of furniture or your bedroom sets or your carpeting, that's the place to go. Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More, 459 Overland in Burley. Wheels, do we have the doctor back? Hello, over at the station. Do we have Dr. Bill on the line?
Yes, sir, we do.
All right. Dr. Bill, good morning. How are you?
How you doing, Zeb?
I am great. Hey, I'll get right into it this morning because I know you're busy, but what is going on this time of the year when we're talking about cold temperatures, 7 degrees this morning, and what about some of these viruses and diseases that are going on? Let's start, first of all, with the dogs. What's happening?
Well, we got a flu bug that kind of started in California, of course, you know. But it's moved into Salt Lake and Boise, and now there's actually a couple of cases over there on the east side of Idaho, so it's coming. It's a canine influenza virus.
Uh-huh.
And it's presenting almost like kennel cough, so actually what's happening now is all the boarding facilities are requiring you to vaccinate for it, which is a heck of a good idea because I know we're going to see it here.
Okay, now how does it spread, though? Explain that.
Coughing, just like flu in people. Coughing,
really?
Mainly, and what better place to get it than in a kennel? Most of the cases that we have in Idaho, we only have like 3 cases now, but they've all come from dogs that have been boarded.
Okay.
You know, in boarding facilities.
Well, Dr. Bill, let me ask you this then. Is it a short-term virus, or could it elongate into something that might be life-threatening?
Well, it depends on the age of the animal, just like the human flu. The very young and the very old, it can be deadly. But usually the mid-age critters, it's not too bad.
Okay.
I mean, most of them are requiring hospitalization, but only for a couple of 3 days.
Wow.
The older ones are spending 4 to 5 days in the hospital.
Well, you know, this is an obviously dumb and naive question on my part, but how do these viruses all of a sudden start and grow and go across the country? I mean, you say, yeah, it's passed through like the regular flu, but where do these viruses start for especially the animals?
Well, the animal viruses, now, we're not talking about horses, we're talking about dogs. A lot of times I think these are just mutations of the influenza that we've had, you know, and I shouldn't say this, but I will go ahead and put it out there that a lot of times what happens is they're actually in vaccines that we use on animals, you know.
Oh, okay.
You know, they are, for some reason, this batch didn't get properly sterilized before they added the vaccine together to make it what it was. You know, say it was a distemper vaccine.
Right.
And I really kind of think that's what happens is as actually it gets spread by vaccinations to begin with.
Oh, my.
Mutations that way.
Okay. Now, I know a lot of things, and you were talking about it in some of the information you gave me for your ad on my program, that if people got a puppy for Christmas and they're lovey-dovey with their little puppy and everything, but boy, it's the time to make sure that they're current on the vaccines, especially the pyro vaccine. Explain that, if you would, please.
Well, parvovirus is actually a fecal oral transmission, means they have to come in contact with some infected manure of a dog, and but what happens is they get immunity from their mama, that, you know, when they nurse the colostrum, just like cattle, and what happens is after they nurse the mama, they get this amount of immunity that will last somewhere 8 to 16 weeks of age.
Oh, my.
And a lot of people think, well, I got him one shot, I'm good to go. No, we don't know when the immunity runs out because we don't know how well the mama was vaccinated, and we don't know how many times the actual how much colostrum the baby got. So somewhere between 8 and 16 weeks, that puppy's immunity is going to go away. So if you haven't had your puppy vaccinated against parvo, that's so prevalent. I mean, we're seeing 2 and 3 cases a week still.
Wow. Okay, now another question I've got, and I'm going to kind of go back in time a little bit here, Bill. We had quite a bit to talk about that algae that was down on the Snake River. I had a lot of calls. People were worried about it, and they wanted to know what it did, where it came from, and how it got started and everything. Could you give us kind of a recap about that algae problem on the Snake River?
Well, you're only going to see it when the water's going down to begin with, because this algae's in there in the water anyway, and who knows where it came from to begin with? Probably off of somebody's boat, you know, that was ran in like, say, the Columbia River.
Okay.
And they didn't wash it before they brought it back. And for some reason, this algae got started here. But what happens is the algae is actually not toxic until the water goes down and the algae dies.
Oh.
Then what happens is, especially with the hunting dogs, they're out there in the mud flats and stuff chasing ducks, and they get a mouthful of this algae, and it this year has been particularly deadly. But we've not seen but just a couple of cases, and we're completely beyond that now. I'm not saying stay away from the river at all now, because we're done with it.
Yeah, but now, assuming that they notice a change in the personality of the dog, what things can a person, if this does happen, what do they need to look for, and is it too late to get them to the vet once they notice these physical changes?
Well, they better be going to the vet right away, because it causes respiratory arrest.
I see.
They actually die, and they bet. All you can do, if you had oxygen there, which hardly anybody does, you know, that's what they need. They need to be tubed and intubated and given oxygen and breathe for them, because actually the algae this year, in contrast to a few years back, the algae this year has kind of mutated again, and now it's causing a respiratory arrest.
Wow. Now, I've noticed a lot of that green, if you will, algae like over at Murtaugh Lake. Is all the algae like that deadly, or are there various other kinds?
No, it takes a particular kind.
Okay.
And usually the ones that are in the lakes and stuff like that isn't the problem. It's the ones that are in the river.
Okay.
That's what makes me think that it probably was brought in by a boat or something.
Okay.
And then when you get the runoff from the farm fields into it, you know, and we see blooms of it, so to speak, when they're washing lots of the fertilizer and stuff off the fields into the river.
Okay. Now, another problem, and the reason I wanted to get you on the air this morning is I was very concerned, like a lot of horse owners, they take pride in their animals because they use them maybe all year round. What's this going on with a herpes outbreak?
Okay, well, herpes virus is always around. It's what you vaccinate your pregnant mares for so they don't abort. But for some reason this year it has been particularly bad. It's the same virus, but again, a mutation of that same virus. It's causing a neurological set of symptoms in there. And we've got it in 5 different counties in Idaho now. You know, Gooding, Jerome, Dietrich, Twin Falls, and one up in the Treasure Valley. All the premises that has been quarantined, so that should stop it. But we've had like 7 or 8 abortions over in a brood farm over in Jerome.
Okay. Now, Bill,
we've actually had 4 mares that had to be put down.
Oh, my goodness. Now, give me a little scenario. Are just the females, the mares, susceptible to this, or is it transferable to gelding stallions? I mean, how is it transferred?
Again, it can mostly be, it's mostly like coughing, sneezing kind of thing. The nasal secretions in the water can pass it back and forth. What they've done now is they've quarantined these guys and made sure they had that rhino flu vaccine.
Yeah.
In the rest of the critters, and seem to have stopped it. But they'll quarantine them for about 2 weeks until nobody's showing any high temperatures, and then neurological signs, meaning they're weak in the back end, can't get up, wobbly.
Wow. And once they reach that stage, Bill, is it beyond hope?
Mostly.
I see.
Unfortunately.
Well, now listen, should most people, myself included, should they try to, for a period of time, stay away from any indoor arenas or anything to work their horses out? What should we not do?
Well, right now, and they have yet to figure out why this or where it came from. You know, usually it's like a gathering of horses, like at a horse show or a rodeo or something like this, and then you see the horses. But none of these horses have anything in common.
Oh.
So they haven't figured out quite where it came from. But what it tells me, too, is you better have your horses, all of them, not just the mares, vaccinated for that rhino flu.
Now, I've got another naive question. Isn't that rhino flu shot inclusive in what we call the 4-way shot that we give?
No.
It is not?
No. That's 3 kinds of Eastern, Western, and Venezuelan encephalitis, and also, not distemper, but tetanus.
Okay, well, you've been very informative. Anything else that you want to tell us about or share with us this morning about the care of our animals?
Make sure that your horses have unfrozen water. Get your trough heaters in, guys. We're still seeing a ton of colics just from they think they can eat the snow. I don't know what they think they can eat, but have you ever tried to eat snow, Zeb?
When I was a little kid, I did a lot of dumb things. But what you're talking about is a favorite passion of mine, and that's to tell horse owners that when they're out there chopping that ice and they think old paint's going to be okay with that, no. If they can invest in an electric water heating system or whatever, they'd be a lot better off.
Oh, for sure. You know, what happens is, traditionally, you go out there, you feed the animal, and then you go chop the ice. Well, guess what happens? He goes ahead and eats, and by the time he gets done eating, he goes over and the water's frozen again.
Absolutely. And, you know, let's
that's a pet peeve of mine, too. I always try to get people, hey, come on.
Yeah.
Would you drink that, eat the snow and try to quench your thirst? No, it doesn't happen.
And actually, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but in the wintertime, horses actually need and will drink more water, won't they?
Absolutely. You know, if you think about it, hay is about 80 to 90% dry matter.
Yeah.
Grass is like 80 to 90% water, so they actually drink a lot more water in the winter.
Now, what about the susceptibility to colic? And I think you've touched on it, and I want you to elaborate on it a little bit. I was forced to keep my roping horse in a box stall inside this winter, a 16 by 16 box stall, and it's not my favorite way. I usually have them underneath the shed in a big stall that they can roam, about 40 by 40. But this year, some changes had to be made. And what about the colic situation? Are they getting enough exercise if we take them out daily and maybe lunge line them or walk them or even ride them, that they won't be so susceptible to colic?
Absolutely. As long as, to me, the main one of that and parasite control, the worming, and the water. If you do those three things, and once a day would be a bare minimum, I think you would get your horses out, even though it's cold. They got to move around.
Yeah. Now, what about the exercise in the spring? This is another one of my favorite pet peeves, is you'll see people, and they'll take those horses after the winter, and they'll lope them around the indoor arena once or twice, and then they'll go chase maybe 10 or 12 roping steers.
Yeah, that would be like you and me, Zeb, going out tomorrow and running a marathon.
Ain't going to happen.
Ain't going to happen, is it, partner? You got to train these horses up a little bit before, or else you'll tie them up. Their muscles will just cramp up and tie up on you.
And what about feeds during the wintertime? I don't mean to keep you, Bill, but these are excellent things to talk about. Don't give those horses that are in maybe a stall or something enough feed or grain that's going to make them want to climb the walls, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I would cut way down on the grain. If you're not using them, they don't need very much grain, because it makes them high and crazy, and then they're trying to bust out all the time, or they're pacing, and if you're not going to exercise them a ton, don't feed them a lot of grain, partner.
And what about
it's good enough to keep them warm.
Okay. And what about a good worming schedule? That's one thing that I'd like to have you talk a little bit more about.
Well, depending on the exposure that they have, very minimal late spring and fall, and the fall one should be the one that gets the bot.
Okay.
And but if you're using him a lot, I would not be hesitant to worm him every 2 months. But you got to rotate your wormers.
Okay.
So that the parasites don't get resistant to it.
Well, now there's a good question right there. What about the paste wormers versus the tube worming or the shot? What one would you suggest?
To be quite honest with you, the chemicals that are in the paste wormers anymore, as long as you get it in them, are every bit as good as tube worming.
Okay.
It's the same stuff. So,
but
as long as you're not using the same one time after time after time, and I know Ivomec is cheap now in the form of horse wormer, but I would not I would alternate that one with the Pyrantel, Pamoates, or something like this. Alternate them so that you don't get a resistance buildup in your parasite population.
Absolutely. Dr. Bill over at Ark Animal Hospital, 750 21st Street, near Connection Credit Union in Heyburn. Number to call, 678-1177. It's true, they have the warm hearts for the cold noses. Dr. Bill, any final thoughts before I let you go?
No, just get the water out to your animals, man. Really, I'm very. That is like you. That's one of my pet peeves is to go out and treat a colic horse. And the reason is you walk by the water trough and it's froze.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed this half hour, and thank you very much. Taking care of all the dogs, kitty cats, roping steers, and horses, Dr. Bill. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Zeb. Thanks for having me on, partner.
You bet. God bless. Ark Animal Hospital, Dr. Bill over in Heyburn, and I appreciate him coming on the air this morning. Let's see, what else have I got cooking here before we go to the legislative update? I want to remind everybody about our friends over in Rupert, and that's Cameron and Siemens Insurance, Highway 24 in Rupert. Excuse me, life insurance, health insurance, retirement planning, employee benefits, all of this and so much more for the protection of you, your family, and your business. These folks at Cameron and Siemens Insurance are devoted and dedicated to serving you. All you need to do is call them and make an appointment at 436-4424. That number again, 436-4424. Cameron and Siemens Insurance in Rupert. And by the way, a company that's over in that same neck of the woods, man, oh man, everybody around the state knows where this place is. Let's Ride, 270 Highway 24 between Rupert and the World. They're open Monday through Friday, 9 to 6, Saturday, Saturdays 9 to 4, and I'll tell you what, right now is the time to be thinking about spring, especially when it's like 7 degrees outside. Think spring and take your four-wheelers over there and get them serviced and ready to go. Ready to go this spring and enjoy all the great outdoors. And by the way, they've got all the four-wheelers and they've got all the side-by-sides and they've got all the accessories. But again, going back to that service department, A1 people servicing your machines at Let's Ride. 270 Highway 24 between Rupert and the World. Let's Ride. It definitely is where the fun is sold. And right now, I am honored. I'm going to be going to this next segment of our program, and we have a great sponsor for the Idaho Legislative Update. And I want to say a great big shout out to Clay Handy and Handy Truck Lines at 400 West, 100 South of Paul. Handy Truck Lines was established in 1928, and they're still serving the great businesses all over the Northwest as they begin their 90th year in operation. Congratulations to them, and Clay Handy and the crew are very proud of the good men that are representing our area up in the legislature, and they're sponsoring our legislative update for this year. Right now, let's go to the phone line, and I'm honored to have Representative Lance Clough on the House Education Committee, and he's a representative from District 24A. Good morning, Lance. How are you?
Good morning. How are you doing?
It's my pleasure to have you on the air, sir. I think this is the first time that you and I have had the opportunity to talk on the radio, and thank you for taking the time this morning.
Well, you're very welcome. It's a frosty morning, isn't it?
It's a little bit more than that when you're my age. It's doggone cold.
Yeah. It's up here in Boise. I was looking at the temperatures in Twin and Boise, and I think it's 5 degrees warmer. At least this morning it was in Boise. So
well, I do.
We'll break out our suntan oils pretty soon.
There you go. I hope you're right. And by that time, you'll be off the legislative session and back here in Twin Falls area. Let me revert back a couple of weeks, if I could, Representative Clough, and talk to you a little bit about a story that has gained a lot of legs and a lot of traction in regards to the science standards for our schools in the state of Idaho. And you came to the forefront along with some others because you did not agree with some of the verbiage that was in the science standards for the textbooks. Would you give us kind of a thumbnail sketch as to why you said what you said and your beliefs?
Yeah. First of all, I need to point out it's a really complicated subject. And some people say, well, why is the legislature even weighing in? And Idaho is unique in that I don't know if I think there's maybe one other state, but I couldn't name them, that has the legislature has the authority to review the executive branch administrative rules. So these are the regulations that we mostly live by to make sure that we feel they conform to and comply with the intent of the authorizations given to the executive branch. So all administrative rules, it doesn't matter if it's a plumbing code or electrical code or things that might deal with nursing or licensing of chiropractors and things like that. All those rules, when they're changed by the executive branch, come to the legislature for review. And this particular year, as well as last year and technically the year before, science standard contents were presented to us by the Board of Education. And so the other thing you need to understand is we can review the rules, and if we can reject an entire rule, and in this case, that rule would have been all the content standards for science, or we can reject a part. And the parts of the rule is when you start reading through them and you say, well, wait a minute, this little section here, that doesn't make sense, or we don't agree with that, the way that was worded. So that's the process we were going through, and that's basically looking through all of these standards. And I'll give you an example of one. It wasn't even the standard. It was actually, I'll back up. There was a standard, and think of a simple phrase that describes what they expect a student in fourth grade to learn, because this particular one had to do with fourth grade. And I'm flipping through my standards right now to try and get to that one. But so a standard might be just a one-line statement that we expect a student to understand or demonstrate an understanding of some subject. And in one of those standards, and I'll read it to you, it was the standard said, obtain and combine information to describe that energy and fuels are derived from natural resources and their uses affect the environment. That's pretty simple. And nobody had a problem with that phrase. But then there's a little, you know how you use bullets and paragraphs and stuff?
Right.
You could also use Roman numerals, but in this case there was a bullet down there that says further explanation. And that's where we got tangled up on this one standard. And it says, and keep in mind, it says students who demonstrate understanding can, and here's an example. Examples of environmental effects could include, include negative biological impacts of wind turbines, erosion due to deforestation, loss of habitat due to dams, loss of habitat due to surface mining, and air pollution from burning and fossil fuels. The interesting thing about that one is there was the word negative wasn't needed.
Right.
You know, we felt most of the committee that prevailed in this one said, why can't you just make the statement could include biological impacts, you know?
Right.
Let students understand the biological impacts. You don't have to, why did they need to have the word negative in there?
Right.
And then there were people from the logging parts of the state. They were concerned because it says erosion due to deforestation. There's better ways to reference that because deforestation implies that we're going through the forest and we're just clear-cutting an entire forest. Now, that's something that may have been done in the past. How else did you get New York?
Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
They used to clear-cut forests in different parts of the country. They do that to create farming areas, etc. But that practice is long gone. So that was a concern. And so that's the only standard that was rejected. And it was rejected because the further explanation we didn't feel was needed, but state law doesn't allow us to reject the further explanation. We had to reject the entire standard. So that's a pretty good example and a good starting point.
Well, Representative, let me ask you this, and I'm going to be very, encompassing in my statement to the point where global warming was used for quite some time, and then they decided, they being the left and the environmentalists, decided to change it to climate change, and there's been a lot of reaction by the so-called scientists that advocate climate change, that those of us that have questions, those of us that maybe don't concur that everything is a lead pipe cinch for climate change, and we disagree, we are called the bigots, the hate mongers, and the naysayers. Would you agree that there still needs to be a lot of study as to really what the causes of climate change are?
Well, obviously the discussion we had on science standards didn't get into that because we're talking about what we're teaching children.
Right.
Whether or not we need more research, I don't know. I think there's a lot of research out there that's not being reported in a balanced way, potentially. And there was another phrase in the standards that would summarize some of my thoughts is let's assume for the moment, Zeb, that there is strong evidence that the temperature on Earth is rising. Let's assume that all scientists agree. 100%, every scientist, nobody that disagrees because all the measurement points show that the Earth is warming. That doesn't mean that we can automatically conclude simply why.
That's right.
Okay, so I was somewhat identified with one of my quotes, and I was just trying to make a point, and quite often not in a talk show, it's hard to do because it's hard to cut me off in mid-sentence. But, when it's print media or TV or radio or some radio news reports, they may select a phrase that you say.
Right.
So I made the comment that because there was some supporting content to a standard, and it mentioned about rising temperatures. And basically, the comment was that this all human caused. And so, and again, this was not a standard, but this is what they reference as supporting content. And I just made the comment, I says, in geologic history, we've seen the world's temperatures rise and fall in the geologic history of the Earth. And I says, and man has only been around for a very small slice of that geologic clock. And my point was that how can we separate that that the current scientific models indicate that it's the human activities causing all the problems, and that it's not solar or volcanic and other issues that can be attributed to the same thing. Because I can guarantee you that the impact of the sun on Earth is right today, even though it's cold out there, even today is much greater than what any humans are causing.
That's right.
Now, are we contributing to our own environment? I think we are. But the question is should we have high school students, and that's what our issue was, should we be teaching our high school and elementary school students, any students, an unbalanced approach to studying climate?
I agree with that.
That was what our challenge was.
Absolutely. And I might add here, and I'm sure you're aware of it, Representative, that just even recently, Princeton University physicist William Happer came out with a study and said that the climate models showing temperature change have not been working properly. As a matter of fact, he even made a quote, and he said that's why over the last 30 years, one climate prediction after another based on computer models has been wrong. So now many scientists are admitting that the gauging and the forecasting of temperatures and global warming has basically been wrong, and they've had to correct their science. So it's not a done deal is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point. And, I guess this will be the first time I've officially said this in public, but you think back to history, and there have been scientists that have been on the verge or on the edge of scientific breakthroughs that have been criticized in society, and you can get back and look at Galileo and some of his discoveries, or almost any of these major names in history. Sometimes it was like it was heresy to suggest that the Earth went around the sun. And what if we were trying to do a popular vote on all education and not allow all scientific thought to be allowed? And so that really what I'm saying is there's got to be a balance to all of this.
In the discussion about climate change and whether or not man-made environments have changed or created a different schematic on climate change, what do they want? Have you ever really sat down and asked these people that are advocates of climate change and that the book is closed and that scientists say this and it's a done deal? What do they really want? That's the one question I've asked a lot of these people on the left. Do they want an optimum temperature at 72 or 68? Do they want to play God and control the weather all over the world? Do they want to have a complete cutback on CO2 to where crops aren't going to grow? I mean, really, Representative, what do they want?
Well, obviously you have to ask them, but I don't think that is clear, and I have my own thoughts about that. In many respects, I think that the climate change has been somewhat of an attack on industry. It's been an attack maybe on the capitalist system, free enterprise system. Some groups trust the government more than they do private enterprise, so I think to a certain extent there is that element that underlies the debate, and that's why that people get polarized. And you look at West Virginia and its dependence on coal, and so if we totally did away with all coal and there's been a movement in that direction, then you would say, all right, well, we don't need any coal mines anymore. And so what happens to that entire industry? And, of course, the oil industry and all the changes. Some of the things that people are doing and suggesting they're good. And the interesting thing is that capitalism has a tendency to gravitate towards the things that make sense, economic sense, and environmental sense.
Right. And, I might also add here that some of these stories that have been provided about solar and wind power, now they say, quote unquote, reaching a cost parity with other energy sources, that also is not true and unfounded. So there's good and bad from both sides of the issue. I think you'd concur on that.
Yeah. I'm not an expert, but I do understand that. Let's talk about, like solar power or wind power. They may be making statements along the lines that they can pay for itself, but it's paying for itself because there's also artificial rules and legislation out there that requires the power companies to buy power at a higher rate.
That's right.
Solar and or wind power.
That's right.
Potentially than from a coal-fired plant, for example. So they may be able to say it makes more economic sense, but only because there's an artificial activity in the free market.
I totally agree. And I want to say this, and I've read everything that's been in the paper, and I've did some follow-up and asked a lot of questions. Actually, I think what you did on behalf of the Education Committee and some others, I think you actually, by speaking out like you did, you've actually enhanced the possibility of a better education by creating an awareness to these students that they want to look and study things on their own instead of just follow down a lockstep trail.
I'm going to reference something here that I didn't witness, and I didn't hear the entire conversation, but I know that there's a member of the committee that was criticized because he was being interviewed after a committee meeting and after a kind of a contentious moment with someone else, and he maybe politically unwise made a comment that he's trying to make a point. And sometimes if you're trying to make a point, you exaggerate something. And then you want to say, and the point I'm trying to make is, and if they focus on the point, the original illustration, and then leave out the point they're trying to make, it makes somebody look like an idiot sometimes.
Right.
I'm talking about the reference to the phraseology was something along the lines is, it's not important for me that a child comes out of school believing the earth is flat as much as that they get a good balanced education. And I didn't hear what his other point was, but I could fill in the blank, and I'm sure he says as long as he can justify and logically explain, scientifically or mathematically why he believes what he does. That's what's important, and he obviously took an example that I want to say most people agree that the Earth is not flat, but I do know there's a group out there that I don't know if they're doing a tongue-in-cheek society that is the Flat Earth group, and they're trying to prove it.
Yeah. Representative, in general, and I'll state my case on this, and I think you'll be on my side when I say this, that the advertisements and some of the naysayers that have denigrated Idaho education and continually say that it's at the bottom of the bucket, etc., I know a lot of the administrators. I know a lot of the teachers from all around the state, and I know a lot of the students and their families. And I got to tell you that I'm very impressed with the educational facilities and the teaching methods. What are your thoughts on behalf of you being on the House Education Committee?
Well, I know the ads you're talking about. It's kind of the Don't Fail Idaho type campaign.
Yes.
And it's always offensive to me. I think it's offensive to teachers. I think it's offensive to virtually anybody involved with education. People will rally around that and say, well, we're not spending enough. But then they don't really talk about what are our outcomes. So a lot of times we're measured about how much we're spending per student, and they'll pick a number like that. But then they don't look at what our output is. What are our teachers doing? What are accomplishing with those limited budgets? And they don't say that. They don't make a statement like, look at another part of the country. And I won't pick specifically on one, but there are parts of the country where they spend 3 times, 4 times as much as we do per student, but their test scores many times are much less. And in some cases, they might be doing better, but it's not, it's not a runaway.
You know, on behalf of your being in the legislature since 2012, what other hats do you wear up there during the state legislative meeting?
Well, I'm on of course, education is my morning committee. We meet every day, and that is one of the most active committees in the House. I'm on the business committee, and that's where we look over a lot of rules and regulations. And because of that, I can talk to you a little bit about my backflow device issues that is required by the Department of Environmental Quality. That's a testing issue. Mm-hmm. And then I'm also on local government, and I have found myself on two sides of an interesting question. One is some people think I'm taking the rights of people to vote away on referendums and initiatives, when in fact I'm trying to protect private property rights, and that's a bill that's coming forward today, House Bill 568. I hope I remembered that one. And then there's another bill that where there's an effort to use some urban renewal money without a vote of the people, which is required by law, because the description of the property they want to build doesn't fit the narrow definitions that were in there. So we're looking at changing the definition to make sure that people do have the right to vote. But in land use, Zeb, I don't know where you live or what kind of house you have, but almost anybody that's listening should be able to relate to this. If you own some property or you buy a piece of property and it has a certain zoning and an approved use, you bought it, you paid for it, you knew what you had. Would you want a vote of the people to come in and change your value of your property by saying, oh, you know what, this was zoned for, I'm going to make up an example, but this is zoned for multifamily that you're living in, and you've got apartments here, or you've got a duplex, and we're going to change the zoning that can only be single-family homes. Yeah. And you go, well, wait a minute, you just lowered the value of my property. Or maybe you have a piece of property that's a zone that you could build a store on it.
Right.
It's commercial.
Right.
And so the vote of the people would come along and they'd process an initiative or a referendum, and they would take away the right to build, a store on that property because the people say, no, that's enough. We don't want to do that. So they change the zoning. Commercial property is worth a lot more than just farmland, for example. Right. But they come in and when they rezone farmland, say, well, you can't farm here anymore. We don't want the dust and stuff. That shouldn't be. There are policies and procedures for those kinds of changes, and that's what we deal with in our local government committee. And in cities, they have one set of rules, counties another, but in counties, there's no limit on when someone could come back in and run a referendum to change zoning properties. And someone could invest millions and millions of dollars in some of these big projects and then wonder if they're going to be able to keep their project.
Absolutely.
So that's some of the other things I've been working on.
Well, I want to tell you how proud I am to have you on this program. It's been the first time that I've had you on this show, and I can tell you right now I'm going to ask that I get you back in the future. Representative Lance Clough, and he's representative of District 24A. I'm flat out of time, but I say thank you very much for sharing with us this morning, and please know that you're welcome back anytime.
All right. Well, thank you, Zeb.
Thank you, sir.
For opportunity.
Have a great day. Thank you very much.
You too. Bye-bye.
Representative Lance Clough on the House Education Committee, and I appreciate his candid remarks right here this morning. And another great example of sending good people to represent us at the Idaho legislative session. And the Idaho legislative update brought to you by Handy Truck Lines. I can't say enough about Clay Handy and his great staff. They provide transportation services to Idaho and the surrounding states with terminals in Pocatello, Meridian, and Salt Lake City, Utah. And as I mentioned earlier, they are still serving the businesses in our communities as they begin their 90th year in operation. Handy Truck Lines, 400 West, 100 South of Paul, 438-5071. Thank you, Clay Handy, for sponsoring the Idaho Legislative Update. Caller, good morning. You're on the air quickly. I've got to go to a weather forecast. You got about 60 seconds.
I'll make it quick. I got a quick comment regarding these kids and the people that want to take our guns, essentially take our guns away with stricter gun laws and whatnot. Let's make a deal. Let's take their smartphones away from them. It's my belief that these smartphones are causing a lot more trouble than guns ever will. And that's my comment.
You know, and before you go, tomorrow morning, listen at 10:06. We're going to have a segment on this tomorrow morning at 10:06. I think you'll find very interesting, okay?
I will, thank you.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. Right now, let's go to weather forecast, and the weather brought to you by Phillips, Oaks, Goodwin, Crane, and Company. Oh, yeah, it's tax time. Deanne's got papers spread out all over the floor, going through all my receipts and all my paperwork and everything. Well, I'll tell you what, get it all put together and let these folks help you. They've been providing accounting services to the Mini-Cash area for well over 50 years. Phillips, Oaks, Goodwin, Crane, and Company. With offices in Burley and Rupert, they are the best with tax return preparation, tax planning, business consulting, and retirement planning. The list goes on and on and on. So please get a hold of them today. Phillips, Oaks, Goodwin, Crane, and Company. And right now, here's the weather.
Well, it's kind of like we hit winter 2.0. Here's your weather forecast for Zebeth Ranch. We do have a slight chance of snow this morning. Mostly sunny skies as we hit into the afternoon hours. We are expecting a high of 23. Winds out of the west right around 10 miles an hour with gusts as high as 25 miles an hour. Tonight, partly cloudy skies, low of 9. Wind chill factor values could make it as low as 0. Winds out of the west right around 10 miles an hour. For tomorrow, partly sunny skies with a high near 31. For Wednesday night, mostly cloudy with a low of 13. And for Thursday, again, we do have a very slight chance of snow showers, partly sunny skies, and a high of 33. That's your weather for Zebeth Ranch.
And it's brought to you by some really good people that you need to get to know because they can help you. It's tax time, and Phillips, Oaks, Goodwin, Crane, and Company serving you, your family, and your business. Get a hold of them today with offices in Burley, 878-7000, and in Rupert, 436-5607. Phillips, Oaks, Goodwin, Crane, and Company. A quick reminder that Thursday, my goodness, listen to the dog in the background. Old Ruby must be barking because Dr. History's coming in the door. Thursday, we're going to be over at Denny's Restaurant, 611 North Overland in Burley for our monthly Zeb's Lunch Bunch. It's going to be a lot of fun and great eating. Everybody, if you've never been there, join us. And we have a lot of fun, give away a lot of gift certificates. And our gift certificate sponsors are Walmart, Smith's Foods, Hanson Mortuary, Stokes Groceries, Doug Martin, Denny's Restaurant. It's just a lot of fun at America's Diner. And that's going to be at 11:30 on Thursday. Don't you miss it. Another quick note, and I'll get right back over to Wheels in a moment. Don't forget the Lincoln Day Banquet's going to be this year at the Burley Inn, this coming Saturday, the 24th, starting at high noon. Lunch at 1, and they're going to have an auction. All the politicals will be there, so you can ask questions and get answers. Tickets will be at the door, $25 a ticket, and that's again coming up this Saturday, the Lincoln Day Banquet at the Burley Inn, starting at high noon. Right now, Dr. History's going to come in. We're going to visit with him for a few minutes. He's got the next segment, and then at 10:30, we've got Steve Thayer coming on the program. I believe it's the first time we've had him, and we're going to be talking about illegal aliens here in America. So don't go away. We've got a lot more to go. Zeb at the Ranch, and now back over to our main studio. Oh, here we go. Hour number 3. You know, it is actually a beautiful day out there today, except it's doggone cold. Good morning, everybody. Zeb at the Ranch with our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations serving you, along with some of our great advertisers like Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. Oh, hey, there's going to be one of the best bull sales anywhere in the United States right here at the Burley Auction Yard on March 3rd, starting at 1 p.m. It's the Sheridan Ranch, Cordell and Patty Sheridan. They're going to have their 23rd annual bull sale. It is a ripping good sale. 80 head of bulls are going to sell, 30 coming 2-year-olds, 50 yearlings, and they've got outstanding cattle. Outstanding cattle. That's not brag, that's a fact. Be sure and call them if you want more information, 208-824-5531, or go to their website, www.burnley www.SheridanCattle.com. Sheridan Ranch, great big annual bull sale, and that's going to be at the Burley Auction Yard on March 3rd, starting at 1 p.m. Right now, we are going to clear the slate and go right now with a gentleman that's been on this program for a long time, and that's Dr. History. Good morning.
Good morning, Zeb.
Hey, I was going to ask you, you did such a wonderful, and I'm not trying to just pat you on the back, I thought you did an outstanding job explaining your trip over to Africa. And the one question that kept nagging me after the two programs that you did you at any time over there, did you actually have trepidations or fears because of instability in the government or instability with the environment or not knowing what to do or where to go on certain occasions?
You know, I really never did feel uncomfortable.
Really?
I never did. Of course, we stayed to the main thoroughfares and one thing and another. So, no, not at one time did I ever feel threatened.
When you were out in the bush, one last question, and then I'll get right to the subject matter for the day. But when you're out in the bush taking these tours and everything, do they have people that go with the tour guides that are armed in case of an attack by lions, tigers? They don't?
Well, let me take that back. When we were on the safari, yes, they had a driver and then they had a man sitting there that did have a gun.
I see.
On the safaris.
I see.
But other than that, out in the village, no guns. It was just a very relaxed atmosphere out in the village, yeah.
And you felt totally comfortable?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, listen, I commend you on a great job the last 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Let's go now to one of my favorite subjects to talk about. And if you look around the room, you'll find on my bookshelves and everything else, I was a student of the Civil War. That was one of my favorite times of American history. What are you going to talk about?
You're going to recognize this, the
Okay.
Battle of Fredericksburg.
Oh, yes.
Yes, but
Okay.
before we go, I need to mention one of our good listeners is an author, and he wrote a book called The Clevenger Gold, and he sent that to me to read, and I've just started it, but anyway, it's the true story of the Clevenger family and buried treasure and murder, and anyway, it's
the typical loving family.
Yeah. Anyway, the author, his last name is Swapp, S-W-A-P-P, so I'll keep you posted on as I start going through this book, but it looks pretty interesting.
Okay, please do.
All right, so the American War between the states was a brutal affair. I mean, with more than 620,000 dead, 400,000 wounded, the Civil War was still the costliest war in American history in terms of soldiers wounded and killed. Now, you know, the Civil War was the only war in our history that put neighbor against neighbor, brother against brother. You know, it was really a sad thing, but you know, they were fighting for what they believed was right.
You know, you interestingly point out brother against brother. In the same family, some joined the Confederacy and some joined the Union. And I've got a lot of books talking about real-life stories about that.
And there's a lot of that took place. But, you know, a most disastrous campaign of the war for the Union was the Battle of Fredericksburg, which was in Virginia. Yeah. The Federal forces made several attempts to take a well-fortified position on the Confederate side of the Rappahannock River. The assaults led to a staggering loss of life and terrible suffering during the attack on Mary's Heights. Right. You've heard of Mary's Heights.
Yes.
And this was in December of 1832, so it would have been somewhat cold.
Yes.
Yeah. But failing to change tactics once they recognized the strength of the Confederate Army, the Union generals continued to send wave after wave of soldiers into this killing field. Really, it was, and thousands were killed or wounded.
Yeah.
But they kept sending men in there. But the battle stretched on for 2 days. Now,
what was the advantage to do that? What did they hope to achieve?
I think they just wanted to drive the Confederates back. Just get out, you know. But it stretched on for 2 days. During the fighting, the wounded Federal soldiers lay unattended in a mountain of corpses where they spent a miserable Saturday night in freezing weather, unable to move to safety. And as Sunday dawned and more failed assaults took place, the Union wounded became increasingly desperate for help. They were out there laying out there, you know. In this awful setting, there was an act of mercy by a Confederate soldier, Sergeant Richard R. Kirkland. And it earned him the gratitude of dying Union soldiers and brought the raging battle to a temporary halt. Now, I don't know if you've heard of Kirtland, but as I go along, you probably will.
For some reason, I think that, wasn't there a book written about him?
Well, as I go along, I'll bet you it's going to bring to your memory what we're talking about here. But despite the futility of continued assaults on Mary's Heights, this General Burnside became obsessed with winning the battle. He ordered his generals to mount more attacks, and finally they convinced him that further assaults were hopeless. Burnside gave in and allowed his army to retreat to the Union side of the Rappahannock River. Well, Burnside's defeat was complete, and Lee's victory added to his reputation. Lee had smashed Lincoln's hopes for a victory against the double stone wall and sunken road of Mary's Heights. Now, that's kind of giving you a little description of what the Union were fighting against. Now, the statistics at Fredericksburg, pretty bad, okay? 114,000 Union soldiers faced off against 72,000 Confederates.
Wow.
At the end of the battle, the Union had suffered 1,284 dead, 9,600 wounded, and 1,769 taken prisoner or missing. So they lost a bunch of people.
Wow.
Okay, but the losses of Lee's army of the Northern Virginia was less than half that. They only had about 608 dead, 4,000 wounded, 633 captured or missing.
What was, I know the answer to this, but I want you to explain it to the audience. What was the nature and the environment of the battlefield where the Confederates were actually holed up, if you will, versus the Union?
Okay, I'm going to get to that, because this was a first for battles, and I'll get to that. But so in December of 1862, Fredericksburg became the site of one of the bloodiest battles of the conflict, and despite suffering defeat in the first Battle of Fredericksburg, a second attack on Fredericksburg would be undertaken in January of 1863. So this is the first one. Now, go back to this Mary's Heights, okay? The Marys was a family prominent in Virginia. They owned a large home on top of a hill at one end of Fredericksburg. Now, Lee could see from his reconnaissance of the area that the Union Army would have to storm Mary's Heights to secure the town. So he could also see that it would be virtually impossible for the Federal forces to breach the double line of stone walls at the base of the hill on which the home sat. So Lee positioned his best sharpshooters behind the inner wall, which was 4 men deep. So he had 4 lines of men shooting, replacing, shooting, replacing. But he believed that if Union troops stormed the hill, the Confederates could shoot them down with little risk because they were behind this stone wall.
Right.
So, anyway, there were 5 failed Union assaults, which validated Lee's belief.
And they went head on.
Yeah, they did. The assaults occurred on a blood-soaked Saturday and Sunday, December 12th and 13th, 1862. Nearly 1,000 Federal troops were killed.
Wow.
Their bodies forming an increasing mound that had to be climbed over by the next unfortunate group of attackers. But the wounded soldiers were left behind at the failure of each attack. So every time they withdrew, here's not only dead, but a bunch of wounded men still laying out there in the battlefield.
Okay, now a question. I've seen the layout of this fight, this battle, and it often occurred to me as to why they didn't divide the Union troops into 3 sections and attack from the flank.
Yeah, exactly. And the story that I understand is Burnside was so intent on taking...
He was belligerent, wasn't he?
He was. Yeah. Oh, so intent on taking this hill, he just kept sending them one after another.
That just makes no sense.
It doesn't. But, and I'm going to quote something. This is by one of the guys that was there. He said, quote, "These wretched men lay crying, groaning, and begging for water and help in the most agonizing manner, and we were unable to rescue them. The rustle of a leaf or the cracking of a twig might send a shower of rebel bullets into our ranks." So they couldn't go out and get their wounded. Okay. Now, at the height of the battle, more than 5,000 injured soldiers lay among the heaps of the Union dead, where they were left to suffer from their wounds in this, again, December. It was cold. So on Saturday evening, Federal soldiers, crouching behind their lines, listened in distress. Can you imagine? To the terrible sounds of your buddies and your friends suffering out there on the battlefield.
Unbelievable.
A few ventured out under cover of darkness to offer comfort, but there was a Lieutenant Colonel Joshua Chamberlain of the 20th Maine recalled that he and a comrade spent most of the night lying between 2 dead soldiers to try to stay warm.
Oh, my.
When the cries of the suffering overwhelmed them, he and his friend left the relative safety of their position to help. And here's what he said. He said, We did what we could, but how little it was on a field so boundless for feeble human reach. Our best was to search the canteens of the dead for a draught of water for the dying. So, can you imagine you're out there, you're wounded, and really, if you could just have some water.
The inhumanity.
Yeah.
The inhumanity of man versus man. It's
Right.
unbelievable.
So anyway, as Sunday morning dawned, it was cold, it was foggy, the agonizing cries of the wounded grew more desperate. And watching from behind the stone walls, there was a guy by the name of Confederate Sergeant Richard Kirkland of the 2nd South Carolina Volunteers, and he listened to these cries for help with anxiety, and finally he couldn't take it anymore. Here is the first-hand account that General J.B. Kershaw of the Confederate Army published in a newspaper, and he speaks of himself as the general. So I'm going to quote what he said about this. Quote, "All day these wounded men rent the air with their groans and agonizing cries of water, water. In the afternoon, the general sat in the north room upstairs of Mrs. Stevens' house in front of the road surveying the field, when Kirkland came up. With an expression of indignant remonstrance pervading his person, his manner, and the tone of his voice, he said, 'General, I can't stand this.' 'What is the matter, Sergeant?' asked the general. He replied, 'All night and all day I have heard these poor people crying for water. I can stand it no longer. I come to ask permission to go and give them water.' The general regarded him for a moment with feelings of profound admiration and said, 'Kirkland, don't you know that you would get a bullet through your head the moment you stepped over the wall?' 'Yes, sir,' he said. 'I know that, but if you will let me, I'm willing to try.' After a pause, the general said, 'Kirtland, I ought not to allow you to run a risk, but the sentiment which activates you is so noble that I will not refuse your request. Trusting that God may protect you, you may go.' The sergeant's eyes lighted up with pleasure. He said, 'Thank you, sir,' and ran rapidly downstairs. With profound anxiety, the general watched as Kirtland stepped over the wall on his errand of mercy.
Oh, my.
Christ-like mercy. Unharmed, he reached the nearest sufferer. He knelt beside him, tenderly raised the drooping head, rested upon his own chest, and poured the precious life-giving fluid down the fever-scorched throat. This done, he laid him tenderly down, placed his knapsack under his head, straightened out his broken limb, spread his overcoat over him, replaced his empty canteen with a full one, and turned to another sufferer. By this time, his purpose was well understood on both sides, and all danger was over. From all parts of the field arose fresh cries of 'Water, water!' More piteous still, the mute appeal of some who could only feebly lift a hand to say, 'Here, too, is life and suffering.' For an hour and a half did this ministering angel pursue his labor of mercy, not cease to go and return until he relieved all the wounded on that part of the field. He returned to his post wholly unhurt. Who shall say how sweet his rest that winter's night beneath the cold stars?" Now, it kind of touches you there, Zeb.
Oh,
you know, here was a ministering angel, if you want to say that. But
you know, that was God's hand right there,
Exactly.
and not only giving him safety, but also helping all those
Right.
people.
And you know, there's a lot of accounts, both Union and Confederate, were recorded of Sergeant Kirtland's bravery that day, and they all indicate that when this young man, in his early 20s, first climbed up onto the outer wall with as many canteens of water slung over his shoulder as he could carry, the Union soldiers were so startled that they paused, they stopped firing, and when they realized what he was doing, the entire battlefield fell silent. A spontaneous shout of encouragement erupted as both Confederate and Federal soldiers cheered him on.
Now,
both sides.
Did anybody else try to help him?
Not according to this story.
I see.
And there may have been others, but Kirtland seemed not to notice. He just focused entirely on his mission of getting water to these wounded men, whether they were Confederate or Union, didn't matter. Anyway, when Kirtland's first group of canteens was empty, he disappeared back over the stone wall, and the firing resumed on both sides.
Oh, my.
But when he stuck his head up a second time, the battlefield again went quiet while he went out to another group of wounded, and this pattern continued for an hour and a half until he had all the wounded taken care of, at least with water.
Doctor, right there, I think you should try to explain a little bit the lines of the Union versus the Confederacy. They weren't that far apart.
No, they were not. I want to say like 400 yards.
At the most.
Yeah.
At the most.
But anyway, this General Kershaw, this is what he said again, and I'm going to quote him. He said, "Little remains to be told. Sergeant Kirtland distinguished himself in battle at Gettysburg and was promoted lieutenant. At Chickamauga, he fell on the field of battle in the hour of victory. He was but a youth when called away, and had never formed those ties from which might be resulted in a posterity to enjoy his fame and bless his country. But he was bequeathed to the American youth, yea, to the world, an example which dignifies our common humanity."
Yeah.
So,
and the thing about the Civil War, it was so uncivil. The way that they fought the wars in those times, from the Revolutionary War through the Civil War, it was so archaic in the way that they basically used the human being as cannon fodder.
Exactly. And, I've just got a little more to finish on this, Zeb, and this is really a touching story to me. Battles and things like that are amazing. The bravery that is shown forth by men, how they step up, But in the midst of this Battle of Fredericksburg, Sergeant Kirtland's act of heroism stands out because he was willing to risk his life to offer aid to the affected enemy. As his acts of kindness became known, his courage was celebrated in both northern and southern states, who knew him as the Angel. He became known as the Angel of Mary's Heights. Yeah. That's what he became known as. But he, as I mentioned, he continued his service to the Confederacy until, as mentioned by General Kershaw, he lost his life at the Battle of Chickamauga. And on September 20th, 1863, his body was laid to rest in Camden, South Carolina. But today, there are actually a number of memorials that pay tribute to Kirtland, including a bronze monument at the foot of Mary's Hill depicting Kirtland kneeling as he gave water to a wounded soldier. And there's also an inscription on the wall of a memorial church in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, that talks about him. So here's a young man who otherwise would have remained unknown to history, but found, I guess you could say, immortality with his courage. And I'm just going to show you a picture of this statue or this monument to him. As you can see, he's kneeling, giving water to a soldier. And once again, the fact that he didn't distinguish between Union and Confederate soldiers.
Yeah.
He was there to aid these people. And unfortunately, he died in battle. And as the general said, he wasn't able to marry and have children and continue on with his life. But again, they fought for what they believed was right.
But the Confederacy and the Union, they both, like I said, they employed the archaic, if you want to call it archaic. I mean, anytime you kill somebody, I guess that's archaic. But the methods and means were so blatantly against anybody coming out of it alive.
Yeah.
I mean, marching right straight on into an opposing enemy, I mean, that doesn't make a lot of common sense.
Right. I mean, you look at even like Gettysburg, Pickett's charge.
Oh, I know it. Yeah.
There was so much loss of life, and
the medicine and the care for the wounded was so ridiculously poor.
Well, there's another story about, I believe it was the Battle of Gettysburg. There was a house not too far from the battle where the doctors were amputating limbs, and they were on the second story, and they would throw the leg or the arm out the window, and it formed a pile right up to the second story window. And I'm sure they saved some lives, but they would cut off a guy's leg, take a bucket of water, throw it across the table, and put another guy down.
There was a movie that a lot of times movies are nothing more than a bunch of fiction and made-up facts, if any facts at all. But remember the John Wayne movie, The Horse Soldiers, about the Union troops, John Wayne heading a platoon? And exactly that, the doctor cutting off a leg and then taking the bucket of water and throwing it across the blood. It's just absolutely amazes me why there wasn't total infection and more people dying.
Right, because they didn't really know that much about cleanliness and germs and infection, and but they knew that if a leg or an arm was so badly damaged, he couldn't live,
cut it off.
They would cut it off. And I, in some of the museums, I've seen some of the tools that the doctors used, the saws, and
and the pain factor. I mean, we talk about all the pain mechanisms today to take care of pain, whether it's Tylenol or whatever. They had nothing.
Right. Yeah,
unbelievable.
And then again, the men who stayed there and fought. You know, I'm just grateful that we do have a united States.
It was a gruesome time in our history, but unfortunately, we still haven't come together that much.
But we could have been like Europe. We could have had a country of Florida, a country of Texas, a country of North Dakota, but we aren't. We are a united country.
Amen.
And I'm grateful to live here. It's a great place.
I don't think there never will be, or I don't think ever was, a country as great as this country.
Well,
ever.
I can just tell you, when I flew back from Africa, when I looked out the window and saw New York City, I thought, welcome home.
The Statue of Liberty?
Yeah.
And then when you lower, the plane lowers down, it's getting lower and lower and lower just before you landed at JFK.
Yes.
Okay, and you're just skimming the top of the water, and my fears were, can everybody swim?
Yep. When you feel those wheels touch, it's like, another safe landing.
We're here. But in my country.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
You did an outstanding job with that. And, we ought to do another Civil War story. I've got a book called Company H. I thought I gave that to you one time to read.
I don't.
About a Confederate soldier, and it's from his diary. It's an amazing story.
I'll have to.
And I'll have to get that for you and let you comment on that.
Okay, that sounds good.
Thank you.
You bet.
Don't go away, because I got to visit with you for a minute. But Dr. History, God bless you. Thank you much. All right. Want to remind everybody, don't forget on Thursdays, we have another great segment called Cassia County School Days. And we certainly want to say thank you to A Child's World at 1308 Overland in Burley. And, of course, they just celebrated their 15th birthday celebration. And they've got all the toys and all the puzzles and all the clothing and all the baby furniture. Oh, my. You've got to stop in a family store. And they've got even the new spring arrivals, too, the suits and everything else. You be sure and stop into A Child's World, 1308 Overland in Burley, along with the Ambulatory Surgery Center at 1344 Highland in Burley, and the number to call to find out more about your outpatient surgeries and how they can save you money. Give them a call today, 677-8888. Ambulatory Surgery Center and A Child's World, bringing you school days in Cassia County on Thursdays at 1010. We're going to take a little break. We'll be back in just a few moments with our next guest on Zeb at the Ranch.
And now, back to Zeb at the Ranch on AM 1230 KBAR. To reach Zeb, call 436-2244 or toll free 1-866-927-4587. And now, here is Zeb Bell.
Oh, my. Look outside, the snow, and look at the blue sky. Pretty day, but it's also pretty doggone cold out there, too. Welcome back to our last half hour, and right now we're going to go right to the phone line. We've got a gentleman waiting, and his name is Steve Thayer, and he is with the Law Enforcement Action Network. I had to look down and read that properly. Good morning, Steve. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you, Zeb. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for having me.
You're very welcome, sir. Give us a little background about you, what you do, and the organization that you represent.
Well, the Law Enforcement Action Network was put together to really inform people of the real issues associated with law enforcement. We support law enforcement officers, and we really were taken aback by the position that some in society were taking in regard to police officers, and we thought it was necessary to support them. It's true, if a police officer messes up, then he should be held accountable. But other than that, they've been unfairly criticized, and I came out of retirement. I'm a former U.S. attorney and a former judge, and I came out of retirement just to help this organization help police officers.
Let me ask you this. You don't mind if I call you Steve, do you?
No, sir.
All right. Let me ask you this question to start things off. How much damage, absolute damage, did the Colin Kaepernick with the wearing of the socks that depicted policemen as pigs, and then his stand, or I should say kneeling, of the national anthem, and how it was encouraged to go to other players in the NFL, how much damage did that do to the police?
I think it did a lot of damage. I'm also a Vietnam veteran, and that flag means a lot to me and the people who serve with me whose names are on the Vietnam Memorial Wall. And these law enforcement officers who are out there, who leave their families and don't know if they're coming back, need the support of the community, and to undercut that support, and quite frankly, it didn't start with Colin Kaepernick. It started with the Obama administration.
Right.
All of this anti-police rhetoric where we're painting police officers with the brush of racism came about from in 2014 with Ferguson, when a white police officer was defending himself from a thug who was trying to take his gun, and he was lambasted across all the news media for days and days and days. And he did nothing wrong. And that separating of people and talking about police officers as being racist and out to kill African Americans was just plain wrong. And this is part and parcel of the burdens that the police officers and law enforcement officers carry every day.
You know, Steve, I am so blessed to have you on this program this morning, because just yesterday I was absolutely outraged, and I use that word for all intents and purposes. I was outraged when I heard that a business owner in St. Louis, Missouri, had an antique business, I believe, and she had put out a flag with that blue stripe in the flag supporting the police, and she received a notice that pig supporters are not welcome. The flag goes down or you go down. Is that the society that we're living in today?
Unfortunately, it appears it is. There are some people, mostly on the left, who feel it's to their political advantage to drive a wedge between the citizens in society and their law enforcement people. And for a business owner to be threatened with her very livelihood because she supports law enforcement is just totally wrong. And I would suggest that everyone in that community who does support law enforcement should go to that store and buy something.
Absolutely. You know, but it goes so much further, and I try to be as supportive as I can on this program of our police, our military, etc., that are absolutely putting their lives on the line every day. But in this country now, it seems like the left doesn't care about the policeman's life on the line, because they want to bring in and seem to want to immigrate more problems with illegal aliens, which is another concern for the police and how they handle the matter. How in the world can anybody keep up with this mess?
It is a mess. This illegal immigration thing has resulted in deaths of our citizens, has resulted in deaths of police officers who have responded to criminal activity. It is terrible. You know, what the left does is they talk about immigration, and if you say something against illegal immigration, they say, see, you're anti-immigrant. Totally untrue. There are two sets. One are the legal immigrants, and I was very glad to hear the Homeland Security Secretary say just last week that the President has signed a national security memorandum that will establish a national vetting center within DHS, which will fuse intelligence and law enforcement data from across the government in one place. That ensures that those who are coming in legally and have been vetted truly do not have a background that would cause us harm. On the other hand, we have the illegal immigrant problem. We don't know who these people are. We don't know if they're committing crimes in their country of origin. We don't know if they're running from the police in their own country. All we know is they show up here, and that is a very problematic situation. Not that, in many ways, even children coming over.
Right.
You're familiar with the MS-13, the transnational gang, whose motto is to kill, rape, and control.
Absolutely.
They're in a number of our cities, and the Attorney General has gone after them, but 30% of the MS-13 members who were arrested in 2017 were unaccompanied alien children. They come in here, they're between 13 and 17 years old, and then they're recruited by MS-13.
Right. You know,
they get involved in all kinds of murders, money laundering, drugs, auto theft. It's just a terrible situation.
You know, and elaborate a little bit more on that, Stephen, because I want to ask you this. I was absolutely incensed. I was really teed off, in cowboy terminology, after the State of the Union message that it could be misconstrued that when Donald Trump, our president, stood up there, and I commend him, he said, we are going to go get, I'm paraphrasing, we are going to go get MS-13 and kick them out of the country or put them in jail. They're not going to thrive and prosper here in the United States. And the liberal left loons that are in the media, they construed that said he was against immigration.
You see, again, this is, it's just terrible what's going on. And also you have to add in that these MS-13 members who are in sanctuary cities, even when they're arrested for crimes, are not turned over for deportation. So the sanctuary cities say, okay, you've done your time, you go back into the community, and we hope you don't commit any more crimes. Well, that makes no sense, but they are trying to thwart the enforcement of federal law. And when I was in school, I was taught that if you don't like a law, you change it. You go to the legislature and change it. But I don't see any of these congressmen or congresswomen putting in bills saying, let's allow for open border immigration.
You know,
that's exactly what they want.
Absolutely. There was in the information sheets about having you on the program, there was one line that really stuck out to me more so than the others. And I'll read it, and I want you to elaborate on it. Illegal immigrants or illegal aliens arrive here on their terms, ignoring ours, and stay as long as a lazy giant fails to act. That sums it up for me.
And that's exactly what we just talked about. They aren't vetted. They don't comply with our immigration laws. They just get here, and then the lazy giant, being the government, who doesn't go after them, and I'm speaking specifically of sanctuary cities, where they hide these people and don't turn them over to ICE authorities, to the federal immigration people. They just stay here. They commit crimes. And it just seems to me the liberal left believes that the ends justifies the means. They want to have open borders, so they want to welcome these people in, and even though they're putting their own people at risk, these illegals are killing Americans, they're killing police officers, but it's collateral damage for the overall view of having open borders.
Yeah.
And it makes no sense to me.
Steve, give me a little scenario with your expertise and your knowledge, being in the industry that you've been in for practically all your life. What is it really like for a law enforcement officer today in the likes of like San Francisco, L.A., Chicago, etc.? I can't imagine why they would even want to keep the job.
Well, you know, that is so true. And in the cities you've just mentioned, they are having a difficult time getting recruits to come in.
Wow.
These folks who may want to help society, be police officers, are so concerned that if they pull someone over and ask them their legal status, now all of a sudden they're racist. If they shoot a fleeing suspect who's out killing people, they may be called racist. They're called pigs. Who wants to do that? And the bottom line is, without our law enforcement officers, we have chaos in our communities. And that's why, as I said, I came out of retirement just to support these police officers.
Let me ask you something in regards to Kate Steinle. Her face, her picture, her beautiful persona, her love of life, and walking with her dad on that pier in San Francisco, and then an illegal alien shooting her. What did you think about the jury's verdict as far as basically letting this illegal alien off the hook?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, was the illegal alien charged appropriately, or was he overcharged? And that debate can go on and on. I wasn't in the courtroom. I don't know what evidence the police had and the prosecutors had and were relying on. But I do applaud the federal government for jumping in, arresting him, and now he's in federal custody. He'll do federal time, and then he will be deported. Not like in San Francisco, where they're not deported. They're just released back into the community with hopes that they don't commit a crime again.
Well, which leads me to ask you this. I mean, we're looking at Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of Chicago. We're looking at Bill de Blasio in New York. And we're looking at the likes of Pelosi and others that are in control, not only nationwide, but also in San Francisco, L.A. How bad is the sanctuary city policy right now, and why can't it be stopped?
Well, because the locals, it can be stopped, I believe, if the public could get to vote on a referendum on these very issues. But the Supreme Court has laid down certain criteria, and the enforcement of immigration laws is a federal responsibility. And the states can't prevent the feds from helping, from performing their duties, but what they're doing now is not helping and thwarting it by not finding out the status of certain people that are arrested. And for some reason, these liberal communities are willing to sacrifice the lives and property of their constituents for the end of being able to say, we are a sanctuary city, and whoever gets here by whatever means, even if you're illegal, we'll take care of you, which makes no sense. These illegals, when they get here, they're, according to the Supreme Court of the United States, they're entitled to education. They're entitled to go to the emergency room. They're entitled to all kinds of benefits, and if illegals have a child in the United States, that child becomes a citizen, and now they're entitled to more federal benefits. So it's a very, very costly thing. The Heritage Foundation quoted another study that said that from 2010 to 2011, California budget deficit was $14.4 billion.
Wow.
But their expenses for illegal aliens was $21.8 billion. They could wipe out their entire deficit if they weren't supporting illegal aliens. And the City College of San Francisco just passed the city passed a budget that had a line item for undocumented student success programs. It's almost $1 million.
Wow.
So that $1 million could be used for something else, I'm sure, but because liberals think we should be an open society, the taxpayers are carrying the burden.
You know, Steve, final thoughts here, as I'm almost out of time, but I got to have you back in the near future. Hindsight, looking at the election in 2016 and Donald Trump winning the election over Hillary Clinton, in hindsight and speculation, how bad would this situation be if Hillary had become president?
Oh, my goodness. We know how bad it would be. Number one, Trump came out of the gate supporting law enforcement. Hillary would have continued the abysmal policies of Holder and Obama of calling police racists and pigs. I mean, it would just be terrible. She would never enforce immigration law in sanctuary cities. We would have open borders. We wouldn't know who was coming in, whether they be terrorists or criminals. We dodged a bullet, as they said.
Now, what do you think so far of what the Trump administration is doing after the first year, with 3 more years to go, and a concentrated effort by the left to try to stop him from a re-election? What are your main concerns right now?
Well, my main concerns is that the fake news continues. That they, at every bend in the road, they try to cut him down. They demagogue all the issues. They say he's a racist. And all of this stems from, in effect, the killing of the First Amendment. It seems now that if someone says something you disagree with, even if it's a plausible political policy, you have to denigrate them, come up with a word to vilify them. And that is continuing on and on. But I'm a Ronald Reagan fan.
Yes.
He had appointed me United States Attorney back in 1980. He believed in the American people. We have to put our faith in the American people. And I do, and I believe the American people, the citizens, are going to see through this liberal facade and see that law and order is the way to go.
Well, I hope so. I pray so. Stephen Thayer with the Law Enforcement Action Network, and thank you, and I mean this, thank you very much for coming on my program. I certainly hope you'll consent to coming back in the future.
Absolutely, Zeb. Thank you for having me.
God bless you, sir. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed that man being on my program, and he's going to get an invitation to come back in the near future. Outstanding. Stephen Thayer with the Law Enforcement Action Network. Thank you very much. Oh my, I've got to get a weather forecast on here, and the weather brought to you by Don Scarrow and the crew at 331 North Road, Jerome. All the meats at Scarrow's Meats. All you need to do is either stop over there at 331 North Road or give them a call at 324-7657 or go to their website, scarrowsmeats.com. Delicious meats, whether it's the breakfast bacons or the sausages or the bratwurst or the marinated prime ribs. Oh my, delicious. We'll have more about Scarrow's Meats right after this weather.
Well, it's kind of like we hit winter 2.0. Here's your weather forecast for Zebeth Ranch. We do have a slight chance of snow this morning. Mostly sunny skies as we hit into the afternoon hours. We are expecting a high of 23. Winds out of the west right around 10 miles an hour with gusts as high as 25 miles an hour. Tonight, partly cloudy skies, low of 9. Wind chill factor values could make it as low as 0. Winds out of the west right around 10 miles an hour. For tomorrow, partly sunny skies with a high near 31. For Wednesday night, mostly cloudy with a low of 13. And for Thursday, again, we do have a very slight chance of snow showers, partly sunny skies, and a high of 33. That's your weather for Zebeth.
And I thank you much. And the weather brought to you by some really good people. And oh my goodness, like I'm a big fan of their bratwurst and everything. It's fantastic. Scarrow's Meats, 331 North Road, Jerome. Number to call, 324-7657. It's really true. Scarrow's Meats, changing the way we eat, one delicious bite at a time. It's good. Okay, that's going to be about it for today. I do have time for one more call if you want to give us a jingle. I got to take a look here at my scheduling for tomorrow. I've got Dave Bego coming on the line, and I've got Dr. John Baker scheduled for 9:30. Tim Rosenberg is going to be talking about Islam and their ideology at 10:06. And then I've got an attorney with the Pacific Legal Foundation coming on at 10:30. So we've got another full plate tomorrow on Zebeth Ranch. Another quick reminder that this Saturday at the Burley Inn, it will be the Lincoln Day banquet, and it's going to be at high noon, literally. And it's going to be at high noon starting time at the Burley Inn, lunch at 1. They're going to have an auction. They're going to have all the politicals there. Please be there at the Lincoln Day banquet at the Burley Inn this Saturday. Tickets will be sold at the door for $25. Okay? Don't you miss it. A big thank you to our, don't drop all the papers there as ever. A big thank you to our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations, as they're now celebrating the Founders Celebration in honor of Mr. Les Schwab. All 7 locations right here in Magic Valley with the best of tires for your car, pickups, SUVs. Of course, the very best in brake service, front end alignment, shocks and struts and batteries. All of this and more with the best in service. They really care. Lane and Rupert, Dave on Blue Lakes and Twin, Mike and Buell, Mike and Jerome, the Twist family and Paul, Daniel on Poline in Twin Falls, and Randy on Overland and Burley, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. Caller, I got about 30 seconds. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that tonight at 7, the county or the city council of Burley is voting whether or not to declare eminent domain on Franklin Building Supply, and I thought that the people of Burley should be aware of that so they can go and tell them what they think.
Absolutely. You know, I wished you'd have called in earlier. We could have talked more about that. But give us the time of that meeting tonight again, please, quickly.
It's tonight at 7 o'clock.
All right, sir. Thank you, and I appreciate your calling in. Thank you very much. All right, sir. We are going to wrap it up, put it back in the box for today, and open it up tomorrow morning again at 8:06. Zeb at the Ranch right here on KBAR 1230 and streaming live on the internet, zebbell.com. Don't forget to get my weekly blog, Cow Pies and Coffee Cups. All you have to do is go to zebbell.com, click in your address, and we'll get it to you. Until tomorrow morning at 8:06, the way things were are the way things ought to be.